Deborah. Welcome to the Courageous Church. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us, especially if this is your first time to be here.
And I'm Denzel. Once a month, we dedicate a Sunday where anyone can get baptized. And today is that day. If you're thinking about getting baptized, don't wait. Take that next step today. At South, go to our Orange Room. And at North, in the community room, after any worship experience, don't wait to get signed up. And don't worry, we have everything you need. We'll be outside ready to cheer you on.
Here at TCC, we're all about 4 things: knowing God, finding freedom, discovering purpose, and making a difference. A huge part of that is our dream team, a team of people who've decided to make Courageous their home and have found an area to serve in that they're passionate about. We are so grateful for the dream team. We couldn't do anything we do without them. And as you can tell, we have a lot of fun. We'd love for you to be a part of the dream team, and the way to do that is to get started in Growth Track.
These are 3 easy steps to help you discover your purpose at Courageous. Step 1 of Growth Track is today at 11. If you have any questions about Growth Track, guest services can help. We have childcare and snacks.
One of the best ways to grow your relationship with God and others is to surround yourself with people who will encourage, challenge, and remind you that you're not alone in whatever is going on in your life. That's what small groups are all about.
Throughout the week, we have groups that gather around the community in homes, restaurants, coffee shops, anywhere really, to talk about life. We have groups for men, women, married couples, and students. So whatever phase of life you're in, we have a group for you. Today is our small group mixer, so make sure you meet us after the worship experience to meet your small group leaders and to find out what group best fits you. You can also find a directory of small groups on our website at courageouschurch.cc.
Also, First Wednesday worship is coming up this Wednesday at 7 p.m. at our North location. It's a midweek worship experience you don't want to miss. For those of you who don't know, this is a night where we get together for amazing worship, a short message, and delicious food from a local food truck. This coming Wednesday, we'll be having Smoke and Wheels barbecue food truck on the patio. They'll be serving at 6 p.m., but don't worry, if you can't make it that early, they'll be serving after as well.
As we near our Dominican Republic missions trip, we want to tell you how you can be a part without ever leaving your home. You will have an opportunity to give a special missions offering on Sunday, June 18th. This offering will go towards a much-needed medical clinics, as well as building a safe place for children in remote areas. Start praying now about how you can help.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. Let us know if we can help you with anything while you're here. We hope you have a great weekend.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Let's give it up for Jesus this morning. With all of your might, give it up for Jesus. I am so glad that you are here, and welcome to the Courageous Church. My name is Tyler. I'm the lead pastor, and we are in a series called The Bad Habits of Jesus. But before we get started, we value an interactive environment, so if I ask you to say something, say it. It helps me not preach too long. And also, we want you to be comfortable. So look at the person next to you and say, the floor is lava. Just look at them right now and say, the floor is lava. If they'll know what, the floor is lava. Get this? All right. That's the new thing. Back in, when I was a young man, it was the roof is on fire. Now it's the floor is lava. You're welcome. I'm glad to help you along culturally as I can. So let's do this. There is a tendency when we talk about Jesus to try to tone down his revolutionary edge, because Jesus had an edge. Like, there were many times when he was offensive, and what he did was scandalous to the religious majority of that day, and he did things they didn't want to do. He was with the wrong people. He gave people that they didn't like a chance. Jesus acted in ways that were sometimes offensive, and he did not care whether anybody liked it or not. And today I want to talk to you about that. Today, I want to talk to you about Jesus breaks the rules, all right? Or Jesus broke the rules. Now, Every time we see Jesus having an offensive moment where he puts people back on their heels, like it's to teach us, it's to show us, it's to arrest our attention and bring us closer to what God wants us to know about him. Like he told his disciples this, he's like, listen to me, I am the Prince of Peace, but my teaching is going to upset the status quo. He told them in Matthew 10:34, he said this, do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace but a sword. What does this mean? It means, he's like, look, disciples, don't be surprised or shocked or intimidated when my message and the kingdom that I'm bringing to this earth causes some people to be upset and causes some people to misunderstand me. You got to be okay with that. And it might cost you some friendships. And it might cost you some goodwill that others maybe had towards you. They may not like what I'm all about. You got to be ready for that, okay? And so Jesus is trying to change what had become very against people that had needs. Like, here's the thing I want you to know about Jesus. Jesus is against the things that are against you. Jesus is working against what is working against you. So, in order to prepare for this sermon, y'all helped me out a lot this week. I got on Facebook, or as I like to call it, the Facebook. That's what I like to do. Thank you. And I asked this question, right? You might have seen it. If you haven't friend request me. It helps me in so many ways, all right? That way I know what to preach when I see what you're doing on a weekend. I'm teasing. That's a joke. We're not that kind of church. Okay. So here's what I wrote. I said, will you help me prepare for Sunday? Give me all the weird religious rules you have personally experienced. And folks, let me tell you, a riot broke out in my comment section. It was quite the thing. So I'm going to share some of these with you, all right? This is us. This is the home folks. I thought I was the only one that had been affected by crazy, weird religious rules, but so have all of you. Isn't that wonderful? We're all a little messed up. All right. And so Oakley writes this. She's like, well, how much time do you have? I couldn't listen to Christian music that had instruments in it. So I don't know what she listened to, like Gregorian chant music or something. And then there was no clapping in church. I could not wear shorts. I could not associate with other denominations of Christians. Like, those other Christians, they're bad. We're the only good ones. That's a common thing. All the men at church had to wear a suit. Women couldn't speak or address the congregation. They could only help in the nursery, the kitchen, or for cleaning. And if you did something they didn't like to be forgiven, you had to parade down the front row and sit alone in the pew during an invitation song. And then the preacher would read a statement that you had to write out loud and pray over you. And also, this is very important, they were not allowed to drink root beer on youth trips. Like, no root beer, because, of course, it's beer, okay? So that's Oakley's story. Josh wrote this. He said, I had to go to youth camp and swim in jeans because swim shorts were of the devil. And at that same camp, they made me shave off some sick mutton chops I'd been working on for a long time, or be sent home in a taxi that I had to pay for. And then he writes in all caps, Jesus had a beard. It's like William Wallace screaming, freedom! It's like, Jesus had a beard. And Jesus, let me tell you right now, Jesus is for your mutton chops, sir. Don't think the Lord doesn't love them. He loves them, and he's smiling on you right now with your beautiful pork chop cheeks, okay? All right, let's see what else I got here. Some of these are so crazy, y'all aren't going to believe them. This is one of my favorites. Wendy wrote, and she said, an evangelist came through our church and preached against having owls, like owls as decor. She said, I can't remember why. I just remember they were popular, and we had to come home and purge our house of the owls. Now, I just want to put everybody on notice that God created owls, okay, just so everybody knows that. Here's a good one. This is by Eric. I've seen Eric at our South location. He said, no facial hair. The pastor, I can't even believe this is real life. Yes, I can. I live this stuff. The pastor would stroke my beard in front of the whole church while preaching against beards, quoting, obedience is better than sacrifice. You're welcome. You're welcome. I don't know what to do with that, okay? Here's another good one. I got to quit this. I'm going to run out of time. But if you were baptized into a certain church, Rihanna wrote this. She said, if you were baptized into a certain church, that church then owned your soul. The church The church owned your soul. And if you left, you were certain to go to hell. Jesus broke the rules, and it offended people. I've got 3 examples today of this happening, and I want you to think on this and look at this. And I'm sharing this with you so that you can see the heart of our Savior for people, so that you can see the heart of our Savior for the things that life throws at us, okay? And so here we go. It's starting in Luke 11:37, all right? Now, setting this up, I have 2 sons, and they'll come up to me and hug me and love me, and I love that. And every once in a while, they'll put their hand on my face, and I'll just realize they've been at school all day, and their hand is hot and sticky and clammy. And I just say to them, you know what, I love you, go wash your hands, right? How many of you know hand washing is important? Where my Purell people at in the house today? You got the sanitizer in every room in the house, in your purse, in your car, in your office. Yes, there's a lot of hand washing that goes on. That's all good. This story is about Jesus not washing his hands. Let's check it out. Luke 11:37. When Jesus finished speaking, a Pharisee, that's a religious ruler, okay? A Pharisee invited him over to his house to eat with him. So Jesus went in and reclined at the table, and this is what happened, verse 38. But the Pharisee was surprised when he noticed that Jesus did not first wash before the meal. Jesus didn't wash his hands, and this was offensive. This was the rule with the Jews of that day. It was in something called the Mishnah, okay? Now, I have done some extensive research on YouTube this week and watched a bunch of rabbis explain with great excitement the techniques of washing your hands like they did during that day. If you're going to eat bread, you got to get a certain jug, and you got to fill it with a certain hand, and you got to pour it a certain way, and you got to hold your hand a certain way so the water doesn't get on your wrist, and you can't talk, and then you got to speak a blessing, then you got to dry them off a certain way. One of the videos that had some really hip Jewish ukulele music in the background, which I enjoyed, took 14 minutes. Now, I've seen the signs in the bathroom telling employees that they need to wash their hands for 30 seconds, and I wholeheartedly agree. Come on, somebody. But 14 minutes to explain hand washing, and they don't even use soap. It's this ritual that they do, and Jesus didn't do it. And they're like, nervous laughter. What are you doing, Jesus? Like, this is indicative of extras, because this washing of the hands was not about hygiene. It was about like being holy, okay? And so, this was such a big deal to them. Like, I was reading, and it says one Jewish rabbi was locked up by the Romans, and they gave him a ration of food and water, and the rabbi almost died from dehydration because he used all of his prison drinking water to do all this ceremonial washing. Like, it's a big deal to these people, and Jesus is like, I'm ready. Where the mashed potatoes at? I'm sticking my hand right up in them. I don't care about your ridiculous rules, he said. And so Jesus wanted people to know through all of his actions that he was working on our behalf to remove heavy burdens and to take away unrealistic, say unrealistic, extras. Jesus cannot be found in the extras, all right? And so Jesus is like, these things are difficult, they're ridiculous, and I'm going to break the rules for you, okay? Here's what religious people do. Jesus, in that moment, is God in human form, the only begotten Son of God. Jesus is God, okay? Now, they're trying to impose in this moment, because he didn't wash his hands, they're trying to impose rules on God. Are you kidding me? He's God, revealed to us in the flesh. So that's what religion does. Religion creates rules that try to make God holier than what he really is. It's nauseating. It's terrible, okay? And so Jesus, though, which I love about him, Jesus does not just hang out with sinners. Like, Jesus doesn't just hang out with the ladies with the clear acrylic high heels. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. Like, Jesus hangs out with religious types too. Okay, I like that about him. Jesus would probably hang out, with the hand sanitizer crowd. I'm just thinking he might, all right? And so then it goes on to say in verse 39, then the Lord said to him, now then, you Pharisees, you clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you're full of greed and wickedness. You foolish people, do not the one who made the outside make the inside also? But now, as for what is inside you, be generous to the poor, and everything will be clean for you. He was so concerned about these rituals. He was so concerned about upholding religious rules that something in their heart went wrong. And Jesus is like, this is prime space for me to break into your rules and just break them, all right? And so, I mean, and I can't believe, I wouldn't want to do what Jesus just did here, because going to these Pharisees' houses was like sitting down and having a discussion of the tax code with the IRS. Like it's rules upon top of rules upon top of rules, and then they help you, they interpret them for you, and then they punish you if you don't do them. Like that's what Jesus was getting into. But this hand washing was about, before you ate bread, you had to do it. And Jesus is like, I'm not a part of this because I am the bread of life. Truth is not found in a list. Truth is found in a person. And when rules start becoming the focus of our life, we lose sight of Jesus all the time, and Jesus will break those rules, all right? And so Jesus, they thought he was unholy because he didn't do their rituals. And so any religious system that tries to make you jump through hoops to be holier than Jesus' actions is wrong, wrong, wrong. Somebody clap your hands to that. It feels free in this place. Yeah, it's wrong. So Jesus broke the rules when the rules were breaking down people. And what Jesus was teaching us is this. Look, you don't have to be perfect. We don't have perfect people at this church. Our goal is not perfection. Our goal is progress. And Jesus was telling them, look, unwashed hands are much better than unwashed hearts. Jesus cares about your heart, okay? And so what makes a person spiritual is not the things they do and don't do. It's the heart they do it with, largely, okay? And so that's the first example. Jesus is like, I ain't gonna wash my hands. Second example has to do with a leper, okay? And I don't know if you've ever seen an armadillo. I know they're everywhere up here in the Ozarks. They didn't used to be, but they migrated up. But you don't know this about armadillos. Maybe armadillos can carry leprosy. Yes. Just run them over, all right? Just crunch all you want, we'll make more. Leprosy can be found in armadillos. Well, leprosy is no joke, and in the day of Jesus, it was the big one. And it would start real small on your body, like as a spot, and then it would grow, and it would start rotting away your flesh, and they would exclude you from society. You'd have to go live in a dump, because they knew the stuff in the dump would not come back into society. So if it contaminated it, it'd be okay. So you had to live in a dump. You had to live away from everybody. You were excluded. You were sick. You were losing your body parts. And it's always in the Old Testament referred to as a type of sin, okay? So it was not desirable. So here is a guy with leprosy. And the law of God says that you could not touch lepers because you could catch it and it could spread and it'd be a bad thing. And so the law said the Old Testament law said you were ceremonially unclean if you touched a leper, right? And so here we pick this story up in Matthew 8:2. Say, Jesus breaks the rules. All right, so here we go. This is Matthew 8:2. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean. And catch this, Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man and said, I am willing, be clean. Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. This is something you could easily pass up. But Jesus didn't have to touch the guy. And when he touched the guy, people are like, oh, he just broke the law. He just broke the law. He just violated. Violation. Jesus wants us to know something. That if you have a pain, it's not beyond him touching it. If you have a hurt, he will reach for it. Like there's nothing beyond the scope or reach of Jesus to help you, okay? And Jesus realized something that he realizes about you and me. You see, Jesus knows everything, and Jesus knew that his problem wasn't just leprosy. Jesus knew this guy had been rejected by his family, abandoned by society, told he would never fit in again. He had been through so much. He had been excluded. He had been wrote off. He was unwanted. His life as he knew it before leprosy had stopped. His life had been over for years. And Jesus touched him and broke the rules to tell him, look, I love you just like you are. Jesus will break through the rules to bless you. Jesus will break the rules to help you. Jesus knows what you need, and he's not afraid to touch you like you need to be touched. Touch your heart, touch your mind, touch your body, give you strength, give you help. This is the goodness of Jesus. And so Jesus could have easily said, be thou healed, go ahead, and never have touched him. But he said, I want something more for you. I want you to know without a shadow of doubt that your past is over. I want you to walk into the room of the priests that have to say you're clean or unclean, and I want you to say one thing. I don't know what happened to me, but Jesus touched me. You see, a touch of Jesus is more powerful than any rule we could ever create. We can't control human behavior, and I don't try. But I know this, a touch of Jesus changes the heart in ways nothing else does. So if you have not trusted God and you felt just like that, like I've got this sin in my life, I've got this leprosy in my life, and I'm not sure, if everything that you guys talk about is for me, listen, it's for you. Like it's for anybody. Don't think that you're an outsider. Jesus is letting you know right now, I don't care what you've been through. I don't care how long it's been that way. I don't care what others have said about you. I don't care who's written you off. I will touch you. And whatever they said about you is not reality. I am your reality. Somebody clap your hands right now. This is how Jesus works. Jesus is against what is against you. And so some of you have had that mentality like, not for me. And so you put off taking steps toward God. Listen, today's a great day for you to take a step toward God. We are baptizing people today, all right? And I'm telling you, just like this leper wasn't like, I'm perfectly all right. No, he was not perfectly all right when Jesus touched him. But he reached out to Jesus in spite of the problems he was having. And I'm saying to you, do not wait until everything's right in your life and everything's perfect and, all of your accounts are current or what. Just trust Jesus now. Take a step toward him and say, you know what, today I'm going to be baptized. Or like since today's our small group mixer, say, today I'm gonna allow Jesus to maybe do something new in my life, and I'm going to try a small group. Or today I'm going to quit wondering whether this is where God wants me or not, and I'm just going to go to the growth track and see what happens and see if God will get me on a path to purpose. Listen, don't think you're an outsider. Take a step toward God, all right? And so now the third example, and this is found in John chapter 5, all right? Now, on the day of Jesus, there was something called the Sabbath, and we have a Sabbath, and we keep it by worshiping Jesus Christ. We do it on Sundays. We come together and honor God. And the Sabbath was something that the Jews observed from like Friday night, Friday evening into Saturday evening, and they weren't supposed to work. They were supposed to rest and trust in God during that time. But the religious Jews just made it like this crazy thing with so many rules, like 35 pages of rules on what you could and couldn't do on the Sabbath. It was crazy, all right? So, we have a story here in John chapter 5 of a man who had been paralyzed, could not walk, legs didn't work. I don't know what the degree was, but the Bible calls him a paralytic, okay? This is a person who had a very, very difficult time, all right? And so, Jesus comes by. For the sake of time, we're going to pick it up in verse 8. It says, then Jesus said to him, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Get up, pick up your mat, and walk. He was laying on that mat, all right? Pick it up and walk. And the Bible says at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. And the day on which this took place was a Sabbath. Oh no, Jesus, what have you done? This is no good. You're not supposed to heal people on the Sabbath. And then you told this guy to pick up his mat. He's carrying his mat. That means work. You could be, both of you, stoned for this. They would stone you for violating their Sabbath rules. All right? It says in verse 10, and so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, it is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat. Oh, can you see what religion does to the mind? Can you see what rule keepers think about what God does? I mean, think about this. The guy had been paralyzed, I think it was for 38 years, okay? And they see him walking around carrying what he had been laying on, and they're like, you're not supposed to carry that. They didn't care that the guy who had no legs and arms that worked is like, hey, everybody, what's up? They were just like, you can't be carrying that. That's what religion does to churches. Religion in your heart, rule keeping as your guide in your heart and in the church, turns the church to where we don't rejoice in progress. Listen, you got to know where people started. You got to know what they went through. You got to know somebody's story. So once you know that, you can say, well, I know they're smoking cigarettes, but at least it ain't marijuana cigarettes. Come on, somebody. Or you can be like, well, you know, I'm glad they're where they are now because that's where they weren't. They weren't there 3 years ago. Like, we have to rejoice in progress, and they couldn't rejoice in that. All they could see was not the man who had been healed, just that he's carrying a mat. You really don't know if somebody has had a heart changed by God until you talk to them and care about them and know them. And this is so crazy because, like, the rules were so important to them. The rabbis would debate back and forth about, now, if there was a fire in a man's house on a Sabbath and he had a wooden leg, could he carry the wooden leg out or would he have to leave it behind? Like, that's legit. They would fight over that stuff. I'm saying that Jesus, when he sees all of that cauldron of junk that takes the focus off of helping people and giving people the life that is Jesus and the hope that is Jesus, Jesus breaks the rules. And God forbid we as individuals or as a church would be more concerned about how often we take communion versus how much we help our community. Come on, somebody. Clap your hands right now. I'm all for communion, but we should never think that somehow that trumps putting our faith in action. You understand what I'm saying? We can't put preference over mission. We can't say, I only like it this way. I only want it this way. This is my preference, and this is how it's going to be. You have just said, God cannot work in any other way except this way in my life. And Jesus will upset your apple cart. He will break those rules. And look, when New Testament church, when the church is done right, it's just messy. It's built on grace and faith. It's built on the gospel of Jesus. It's built on hearts being changed. It's built on people coming to Jesus just as they are. Just understand that it's not something that you can manage. We are loving, serving, and worshiping Jesus, and we're trusting Him to work it out in people's lives. And so, you know what Jesus wanted here, I think, when He said, hey, man, take that mat with you. He wanted there to be a testimony. He wanted there to be an awareness that there's power that's more than religion. There's power that is more helpful than what you've experienced thus far, okay? And so, rather than be excited about that, rather, oh, look, he's moving. Look at his legs. Look at his arms. Look at his hands. Look at his biceps. They're like, you're carrying a mat. No. Jesus is going to break that kind of rule in your heart, okay? And so helping somebody in need always trumps holding tightly to our version of what right and wrong should be, all right? Now, we do closed hand, open hand. Just trust me that I've got it right there, okay? Like, we hold the truths of the Word of God in a closed hand. They don't change, and we don't have the right to change them. But we reach for everybody with an open hand. That's ministry. We don't get confused along the way. Just because you reach to help somebody doesn't mean that you're condoning everything they do. My goodness, I mean, are you that fragile? We have to trust in the goodness of God to be the change agent in people's lives. And Jesus didn't break the rules, you know, just to rebel. Jesus had something greater to show us and tell us every time He pushed the envelope. He wanted us to understand that His priority was people, all right? And Jesus would break any religious rule if those rules were breaking the backs of people. And what mattered to Jesus was not keeping the law because he was the law, but it was to help people that were hurting, all right? And so we cannot become the kind of people or church that doesn't see beyond our immediate needs, our immediate preferences, our immediate wants. We have to extend ourselves, and we have to do things that are uncomfortable. We have to do some things that cause other folks to say, well, why are you doing that? because of obedience to Christ and because of a changed heart. And if Christ hasn't changed your heart to where you want to, don't do anything. But when Christ changes your heart, there's stuff you want to give. There's stuff you want to do as an act of worship. We have Serve Day coming up. It's a huge, important day. It's Saturday, July 15th in our church. We mobilize everybody that will in our church on that day. And we send out hundreds and hundreds of people and spend thousands of dollars to minister to hurts and to be a help to our community. Why? Because we can't be the kind of church that just starts turning inward and gets focused on us. That'd be terrible. Like I'll blow it all up if we do that. And so, like if Jesus rules your life, the Jesus rule will cover every situation. You don't have to worry about, well, I don't know. If I do that, let the heart of God govern your heart. This is important, okay? And we can't assume we know everything. If you've ever watched Seinfeld, they always do the yada, yada, yada. Okay, that's like, I know, yada, yada, yada. Listen, don't ever approach God that way, because that word yada means to behold in depth and to understand one's heart intimately, okay? Don't yada, yada, yada what I'm saying to you today, because we all have the potential to start leaning toward, well, the rules say this, the rules. I know what the rules say, but there's a heart involved. There's a person involved. And grace is always scandalous. This is the desire of God. He does not want to control us from the outside. He wants to lead and guide us from the inside. And if it takes arresting your mind, if it takes upsetting you in some way, if it takes offending your sensibilities to reach for somebody who's lost, somebody who's hurt, somebody who has a need, Jesus would do that. We can never confuse what we prefer with God's principles. God is for people, and laws work against that. Extra religious laws. I'm not talking about the Bible. I'm talking about what we impose on people. Jesus wants that broken. Look, folks, this church, I want everybody to know it. If you're new to the church, you've been here forever, understand something. Through the grace and help of God, this church collectively fought religion and won. And it's a human problem, which means that it's an ongoing battle. But we as the people of God need to understand that the heart of God pumps life for the lost. The heart of God beats with life for the lost. And if you have a choice to make, choose life. And don't be rigid. And don't be religious. And don't put all these conditions that God has to meet. Because when we do that, we start marginalizing people. We start discriminating against people. We start being racist. We start having hatred toward those that don't think like us, or we're ambivalent toward needs, or we're disassociated from our city and our community. And all of that causes the heart of God, that is love for hurting and lost and broken and wandering people. It causes that heart to become cold and indifferent. And we can't have that. And so, we never want to do the right things with the wrong heart. We want to honor God and trust Him first and understand salvation comes from Him and that Jesus is enough. What Jesus says and what Jesus does is enough. Jesus is good enough. Jesus is kind enough. Jesus is holy enough. Jesus is wise enough. His Spirit is enough to lead people along the way. We don't have to help God out. It's enough, and it comes from Jesus. And if you've approached God either cynical, because you think all of Christianity is just about rules, or if you've approached God in a way that says, well, I'll do what I want, listen, all we need is a heart that is changed by God. And just as Jesus broke the rules back then, He can break the rules in your mind that are keeping you from Him, and He can help people that others have written off, and that might even be you. Because I know it was me. We as the church need to have passion that meets the passion that Jesus has for people. Would you bow your heads with me this morning?